If you were waiting for the Saskatoon housing market to calm down, May just gave us a pretty clear answer. Prices hit a new record, inventory is still tight, buyers are still fighting for good homes. But here is the part most people miss. The market is not the same everywhere. Saskatoon, Warman, and Martensville are all telling us something different, and depending on whether you are buying, selling, investing, or thinking about moving to Saskatoon, the May numbers may change your next move. I'm Conor Palendat, Realtor with Bedger Real Estate Group. So if you need a top producing team to help secure your dream home or sell your greatest asset, all of my contact info is in the description below. Thanks for joining me, and let's dive in. Let's start with Saskatoon, because this is where the story gets interesting. In May, Saskatoon recorded 519 residential sales. That is down about 4% compared to last year. So at first glance, you might think, okay, maybe things are finally slowing down. But not so fast. Those 519 sales were still more than 10% above the 10-year average. So yes, sales were a little bit lower than last May, but compared to what is normal for Saskatoon, demand is still very strong. The real issue is not buyer demand. The real issue is supply. Saskatoon had 837 available units at the end of May. That sounds like a decent number until you realize more than 250 of those were conditionally sold. So once you account for those, there were only about 560 truly active listings heading into June. And when you look at months of supply, it becomes even clearer. Saskatoon ended May with 1.61 months of supply. When you account for conditional sales, that drops closer to 1.1 months. For anyone newer to real estate, months of supply means this: if no new homes came on the market, how long would it take to sell through everything currently available? A balanced market is often around 4 to 6 months of supply. Saskatoon is nowhere near that. This is why buyers are still walking into showings and realizing that good homes already have multiple people interested. It is also why some buyers feel like they are sprinting through the biggest financial decision of their life. That is not a fun feeling, and the price data backs this up. Saskatoon's residential benchmark price hit $444,400 in May. That is up 3.2% year over year and up from the high in April. It also passed the previous record high of $435,200. So the headline for Saskatoon is simple. Sales are not exploding, but inventory is so low that prices are still being pushed higher. And here is the key point. We are not seeing a market where every home sells for a silly price. We are seeing a market where the best homes in the best price ranges with the best presentation are getting attention fast. There is a big difference. An overpriced home can still sit. A rough home can still struggle. But a well-priced, well-presented home in a strong area, that one is still going to get buyers moving. Now let's move over to Martensville. Martensville had 21 sales in May, which was exactly flat compared to last year. So sales did not grow, but they also did not drop. The interesting number here is new listings. Martensville had 39 new listings in May, which was up over 100% year over year. And that sounds massive, and it is a big jump, but we need to keep the size of the market in mind. Smaller markets can swing fast. A few extra listings can make the percentage look dramatic. Inventory in Martensville rose to 27 units, up 80% compared to last year. Again, that sounds like a major increase, but the actual number is still only 27 homes. That is the funny thing about real estate stats. Percentages can sound like a fireworks show, but the actual number can still be a smaller sparkler. Despite more listings and more inventory, Martensville still had only 1.29 months of supply. That is even tighter than Saskatoon's headline number. The benchmark price in Martensville reached $451,800, up 2.8% year over year. So what is the story here? Martensville gave buyers a little bit more choice in May, but not enough choice to call it balanced. This is still a tight market. It may feel a little less frantic on certain homes, but buyers should not confuse more listings than last year with lots of options. Those are not the same thing. For families looking at Martensville, this market can still make sense. especially if you want newer housing, more space, and a smaller city feel while staying close to Saskatoon. But you still need to be ready when the right home comes up. Lastly, let's talk about Warman. Warman recorded 27 sales in May, down almost 7% year over year. New listings came in at 45, down a little over 8% from last year. Inventory sat at 57 units, which was down 5% year over year. Months of supply was 2.11. So compared to Saskatoon and Martensville, Warman had a little more breathing room. Not a lot, but a little. The big number in Warman is the benchmark price. Warman's total residential benchmark price hit $532,300 in May. That's up 4.5% year over year. That is higher than Saskatoon and higher than Martensville. This does not mean every home in Warman is more expensive than every home in Saskatoon. It means the typical benchmark home being tracked in Warman is carrying a higher price point. Warman has a strong detached home market, and that shows up in the numbers. For buyers, Warman may offer a different kind of value. You may be looking at newer homes, larger homes, different layouts, or a quieter community feel. But it is not automatically the cheaper alternative anymore. That is important. A lot of people still talk about Warman and Martensville like they are simple affordability plays compared to Saskatoon. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. You need to compare the actual home, commute, lot, age, condition, taxes, and resale demand. The right choice is not always the lowest price, it is the best fit. So what does all of this mean? Well, for buyers, the message is not panic, it is prepare. You need your financing ready before you fall in love with a home. You need to know your ceiling before you write an offer, and you need to understand which homes are worth competing for and which ones are not. In this market, the biggest mistake is not always overpaying. Sometimes the biggest mistake is hesitating on the right home, then spending the next 3 months chasing worse options at higher prices. But that does not mean you should throw money at every listing. The smart buyer is not the buyer who pays the most. The smart buyer is the one who knows the market well enough to move with confidence. And for sellers, May was another strong signal. If your home shows well, is priced right, and lands in a price range with strong demand, you may have a very good window. Low inventory is still helping sellers, but sellers also need to be careful. This is not a free pass to price $50,000 above reality and hope buyers lose their minds. Buyers are stretched, they are watching payments, they are comparing every new listing. And if your home feels overpriced, they may skip it, even in a tight market. The best strategy is still simple. Price it to create attention, not silence. And for investors, the story is more mixed. Higher prices can make cash flow harder, especially if you're buying a single-family home and hoping the numbers magically work. They often will not. But tight supply, strong demand, and continued population growth still support the long-term rental picture in Saskatoon and its surrounding communities. Investors need to be more careful with the math. You need to look at rent, vacancy, repairs, financing costs, insurance, taxes, and exit value. The deal has to make sense on paper before it makes sense emotionally. And for people thinking about moving to Saskatoon, this is the part I would pay close attention to. Saskatoon is still more affordable than many larger Canadian cities, but it's not just standing still. The idea that you can wait forever and Saskatoon prices will stay where they are is getting harder to believe. May showed us that even with slightly fewer sales than last year, low inventory can still push prices to new highs. So if you're moving here from another province, do not assume this market is slow or easy just because Saskatoon is smaller. Good homes still move fast. The best areas still get attention, and if you are trying to buy from out of town, you need a clear plan before you arrive. So here's the May 2026 market summed up. This is not a crash market. This is not a calm market. This is a low supply market where good decisions matter. If you are buying, you need a plan. If you are selling, you need the right pricing strategy. If you are investing, you need to run the numbers. And if you are moving to Saskatoon, you need someone who can help you understand the market before you are standing in a showing with 3 other buyers and a deadline that ends tonight. So reach out. My team and I help hundreds of people a year make informed decisions regarding Saskatoon real estate, and we hope to help many more. My contact info is always in the description. Thanks for watching, and if you found this helpful, subscribe to the channel, give it a like, let me know in the comments, and don't forget to have yourself a wonderful day.